Hi guys, Rassie Erasmus here. 2019 is a very exciting year. Obviously we'll end up with the Rugby World Cup in Japan, but prior to that, there's Vodacom Super Rugby, there's Pro 14, there's the Rugby Championship that we still have to play, and I just want to share a few ideas going into the season with you. Yeah, the planning for the World Cup is obviously not just about the couple of weeks that we're at the World Cup. And before the World Cup, we've got the Rugby Championships as well, and a warm-up test match warm-up match against Japan. So there's quite a few things that we had to get in place. But the most important thing is actually, it's not the off-field planning, it's actually the on-field planning, which is what the game is about. It's how we play on Saturdays and do we win matches or not. And I must say there, I must give credit to the Super Rugby coaches and all management teams. We've been visiting all four of them. They gave us the opportunity to share a lot of our planning, and I wouldn't like to bore you guys with the detail of that, but we went right through from when we are in camps, how long are we going to be in camps, playing minutes of players, how much exposure, player welfare, when do we feel players should get a rest, and it's all a working relationship. It's obviously not demands from our side, and I must say it's been tremendously positive, even a step up from last year. I thought last year, 2018, was a good in terms of relationship with the franchise coaches and management. I think this year, the way it started already, we got into much more detail. So basically, I think the big benefit from a Springbok in a World Cup, a Springbok coach in a World Cup year, is that there isn't actually a break in Super Rugby where you get the guys in for a test match series and then it's Super Rugby again, and then you actually get them only for Rugby Championships. So the difference this year is post Super Rugby, we've actually got the players from the Super Rugby final, hopefully if our teams are there, right through till the World Cup final, obviously hopefully if we make it till then. So there would be continuity. We'll probably get roughly around 11-12 weeks with the guys prior to the World Cup, working with them continuously. Planned into that is a few alignment camps, obviously pre-Rugby Championships camps, and a few other things. I think, but the main thing that's really positive is that the franchises understands that, bought into that, and is really at this stage supporting us really well with making sure that we get fit, healthy and motivated, sharp players when the test matches start. So in a World Cup year, team selection is always a big issue and everybody talks about it, but making a Springbok side should always be a big issue, and how you make the team and how do you actually get into a Springbok team, especially in a World Cup year. And I think it might be a good time to also share with the supporters a little bit. Obviously the first thing is the World Cup squad of 31 hasn't been selected and announced, and yeah, there will for sure be a few certainties of players who really performed well the previous years and that we know and trust in, but you can't say that the squad is 80 or 90% selected already. So the first answer would be yes, there's a lot of place for guys to break open the door and get into that team. Then obviously the big question is, how do you get into the World Cup team? I think a great way of looking at it is if you look at the different things a player must do on the field. The moment you run into a Springbok team against the best teams in the world, a player must be above average in most of the disciplines, it being defense, line-outs, attack, whatever is required from him. And then obviously if he's above average in all of those things, you want to have that player who have a point of difference, which we call X factor, where this player actually brings something else to the party and not just a normal thing that any other player has. And I think if players shows that for us in the Super Rugby for the franchise team and help their teams win, it will be really hard to ignore those guys, because it's way off from the World Cup still, and as I say, there's lots of places still up for grabs. Yeah, I think the interesting thing in the World Cup here, the Rugby Championship is a little bit of a shortened format. We do play Australia at home, New Zealand again in Wellington, then Argentina away, and that counts for the Rugby Championship to determine the winner, first, second and third place and so on. And then there's an extra Argentina test match in South Africa which doesn't count for Rugby Championships. And then basically we're back into camp preparing for the World Cup, which is obviously the major competition this year for us with the major focus on it. Then we're going a little bit earlier to the World Cup. I know some people would say that that's not the sharpest thing. We have done all our homework in terms of that and believe that it will benefit us and give us a better chance of winning the World Cup. Playing an extra test match in Japan versus Japan is obviously something added to our schedule. Again, it gives us another week, get used to the conditions. When other teams are still traveling there, we're already there. I know it might get a little bit long, but we've looked at all the pros and cons, and we're pretty confident that will work for us. And then obviously the big game is the opening pool game against New Zealand, which we would have played them previously this year in Wellington. So I guess that Wellington test match is also going to be pretty important in terms of momentum going into the World Cup. Yes, then the World Cup starts with a big match against New Zealand in Japan, and we all know how big that's going to be.